Thank you very much for tuning in to episode 6 of Pushing the Pylon. This is your host, Jim Tannhauser. And before we get started, for those of you watching the video and not audio only, you may be asking, Jim, why are you wearing a Red Sox hat in a football podcast? And that's because the Red Sox moved on in the wild card round, beat the Yankees tonight, and I am very happy about it. And you're going to have to get over it because it is a good hat. And guess what? It matches with the jersey I'm wearing, which is much more fitting for this episode. An Ohio State jersey, custom name in the back of a coach. I will not say his name. A coach that we will be talking about in just a few minutes for all the wrong reasons. I think you already know who I'm talking about. But if not, we're going to get into the podcast. We're going to start off with a little bit of a Jags report. Very exciting this week. Not so fun for a Jaguars fan. Very fun for an audience watching. We're going to talk about the big Sunday night game. Tom Brady back to Foxborough. It went exactly like we all expected, right? Maybe not. Hit or Stand is back. Of course we're back. This time, running back backup edition. We're going to talk about backups playing in the league, whether they're filling in for a starter due to injury or poor performance or whatever it may be. And we're going to talk about that situation and if that team needs their starter back or if they can keep them out and let their backup continue succeeding. And of course, we're going to wrap that all up by going over some highlights of the last week of football and talk a little bit about the upcoming week. Some good games on the slate. But Jags Report, not so good this week. It started off very exciting. Thursday night football was on the horizon. Very exciting for me. And even though the Jaguars lost, I enjoyed Thursday night football a lot. I got to see my team take a lead. The Jaguars had their first lead for the first time in ridiculous amount of time. Definitely over a season ago since they've had a lead. They haven't had one this year besides with the Cardinals. The halftime lead was the real impressive thing for Jacksonville. That's what they haven't had. I don't even think they've had a halftime lead since 2 seasons ago, maybe even early last season. Nonetheless, that 14-0 lead that looked good in the first half, on the back of an excellent run game by James Robinson. Trevor Lawrence finally being able to run a read option in a way that manipulates the defense to his will. And it looked beautiful. And that's all on top of the fact that second or third play of the game, DJ Chark goes down with a fractured ankle because of the play running into him when he's trying to block. A very unfortunate situation. The Jaguars are going to sorely miss DJ Chark. And that is going to hinder their offense a lot to the point of Laviska Shenault needing way more volume, James Robinson needing way more volume, and like I mentioned before, Trevor Lawrence running the read option, being able to carry the ball himself, hold on to it. That's going to be able to alleviate some of the offense that we're missing. And, of course, newly acquired tight end Dan Arnold, who also looked great in this game. Didn't have a bunch of targets, didn't even have a lot of yards. But the little bit we saw of him caught all of his targets. It almost seems like Jacksonville won that trade because I don't know if CJ Henderson makes an impact on the result of Thursday Night Football. Second half, we saw Jacksonville's defense just one play away. They just couldn't make a stop all second half. Their offense would maybe score to match, but then they'd let up another score, and they'd give up more yardage, and they'd get more penalties, and it would just keep stacking up, and that's what happens to unsuccessful teams. One side of the ball completely screws over the other side of the ball, vice versa at times. In just this case, just not enough defensive plays made. 24-21 Bengals at the end of the day due to a last-second field goal make by the rookie, Evan McPherson, as a matter of fact. Tough game for Jacksonville. Playing Tennessee next week, who may be getting their injured receivers back, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. It looks like they'll get at least one of them back, but probably both of them. Really bad news for Jacksonville there. Hopefully the division rivalry motivates them in a way to perform. That being said, after the game, the team, after the disappointing loss, went back on their private flight back to Jacksonville from Cincinnati. And their head coach, Coach Urban Meyer, said, you know what, guys? I'll stay behind. I'm going to see my grandkids, see some family up here as a former coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Ohio State Buckeyes. He figured he'd stay back and see those people. Great, no problem at all. Do you, Coach Urban Meyer, right? So the next day, video surfaces of Urban Meyer acting extremely inappropriately at a Cincinnati bar. So much so that he was getting very intimate with a female, a very young female that was not his wife. He's a married man. And that made its rounds on the internet to the point of him not being able to deny it, to the point of him having to openly face it, admit it, and apologize for it. And eventually, owner Shad Khan publicly reprimands Coach Urban Meyer for his conduct. As a Jaguars fan, it's right on par with what you expect. What can go wrong is usually the question you ask at the start of the year as a Jaguars fan. And by week 5, you're like, yeah, I guess that could go wrong. Our coach completely acting out of character, out of standard for a professional football coach or a professional sports coach or any coach for that matter, honestly. I don't care if you're a high school coach. If you're a high school coach and you get caught on camera doing that as a married man, even not as a married man, it's still kind of a sketchy or inappropriate situation. But as a married man, it allows people to just open the judgment doors way further than they could have before. I do think this puts a ticking time clock on Urban Meyer's career in the NFL or in Jacksonville. For his case, maybe just Jacksonville, but I have a feeling a lot of other teams in the NFL aren't going to take on a guy who had that issue, who is very open with his frustrations adjusting to the NFL. And not only that, he hasn't proved he can win in the NFL. He hasn't proven that he can succeed or teach a young quarterback to excel or improve a defense or improve coaching or even set a standard in the locker room. Now that this story came out, you're getting sources talking about how the team doesn't trust him. They barely did the start, and now they definitely don't. After all, how can you have a coach sitting there and telling you as a player that you have to have outstanding moral character, your conduct has to be flawless, and the second you make one hiccup, you're gone, when the coach does this, and there's no firing of him, and there's a public reprimand, but that's basically a little slap on the wrist. I would like to see Urban Meyer stay. I'm biased as a Buckeyes and Jaguars fan. I want to see him succeed. However, if you're going to be a person from the future, a time traveler, and you're going to tell me that it doesn't get better on the field from what we're seeing with Urban Meyer now, then I guess he has to go, because it is not worth the drama and the distractions on top of a very poor start to a season. It's just bad news all around. It's really sad that a career and legacy like Urban Meyer's is going to be torn down more than it already is to some people because of one night in a Cincinnati bar that he may or may not have been under the influence for. Spoiler alert, I'm sure he was. Most people don't go to bars just to sit there and drink water. But no excuses whatsoever, whether you're sober or intoxicated or anywhere on that spectrum at all. You're responsible for your actions, and Urban Meyer should have to answer for them. And shame on him for doing it, but guess what? We're all human, and as a Jaguars fan, I'm willing to give him another chance just because I don't see a better option for the present moment. All these new coaches that people are talking about the Jags should consider all seem pretty happy with their team, at least for the rest of this year. I saw Byron Leftwich pop up here and there for a name, and it's like, yeah, he played in Jacksonville. He was a quarterback. He can help our quarterback. Great, but look who he's with. He's with the best quarterback ever. Why would he leave that to replace a struggling Jaguars coach that just got fired for off-the-field issues on top of on-the-field failure? I don't know why Byron Leftwich would ever consider that. Whether it's after the season or even during, especially not during it, but after it, if Brady's not retiring, why does he ever leave that situation? I don't think he will. I think Jacksonville is just in a situation where they have to keep putting their heads down, playing football, and just trying to figure it out in the offseason and get a little more urgent around draft time. Instead of taking these flyer picks in certain rounds, you have to make sure you get them right. Last year was easy. Number one pick, that's easy to draft Trevor Lawrence. That doesn't take skill. That doesn't take a front office that knows what they're doing. That just takes someone that has the slightest amount of football knowledge and is in charge of a team that has no quarterback situation or any quarterback you can trust. It's pretty easy. Next year is going to be the hard year. When you have a top pick and you need to address almost everything besides quarterback, and your front office is shaky, and your coaching staff is up in the air, and you're coming off that season, and you're going into a sophomore year of a phenom quarterback when he's likely facing a tough season the season before. He already has the 7 picks. He already, is on this 0-for team. It's going to be rough. And, again, like I always say, we'll be here every step of the way to talk about it on Pushing the Pylon. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this page, subscribe to the YouTube page, like the Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page. However you may consume this content, really helps us out. And it lets you watch the rest of the year unfold for me right before my eyes. Will my team win a football game this year? Will my team have their coach by episode 7 of Pushing the Pylon? I can't answer those questions, but you can get those questions answered if you stick around and keep watching. Plug. Yeah, that's all we can do, though. We can just hope that Jacksonville turns into a reputable football team overnight and upsets the Tennessee Titans like no one expects them to. Moving on to a team that's much more consistent, much more reliable, much more present, and much more built. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady made his first return to Foxborough since leaving the Patriots during 2020. This was a game where most people expected Tom Brady to come in and absolutely beat the brakes off the New England Patriots, myself included. If you follow my picks, I had the Buccaneers -7 as a best pick of mine. That was a loser. We'll talk about the other pick that was the winner. But regardless, 19-17 Tampa Bay Bucks. Absolutely not the final score I expected to see. I expected a blowout in Tampa Bay's favor. However, the rain and the storm that happened in Foxborough before that game, during the game, was just ridiculous. That's the perfect weather the Patriots wanted. Even though Tom Brady's played in that weather plenty, don't get me wrong. The Tampa Bay Bucks as a whole are not used to New England like that. And any type of unsettling to the calm situation would benefit New England because everyone expected Tampa Bay to roll them over and expected New England to roll over. But that wasn't the case. Mac Jones didn't have the most impressive stat line in the world, but guess what? He outplayed Tom Brady. That's an achievement in itself. And yes, I truly believe as a quarterback, you can outperform your counterpart without winning the game. It's not all up to the quarterback about winning the game. But yeah, it came down to a field goal at the end. On top of that, a missed field goal at the end by Nick Folk. Kick you can't expect him to make, and if you do expect him to make it, you can't hate him for missing it. Just a tough situation, that storm. Some would say it was a letdown game. I do disagree with that. I think there's just a different kind of interesting football. This is one where it wasn't Tom Brady throwing 6 touchdowns. But guess what? When push came to shove, we saw Tom Brady surgically pick apart a defense, get downfield. He had 2 throws to Antonio Brown. At least one of them should have been caught. Probably both. Just very unfortunate for the stat line. Brady ended up finishing with 0 passing touchdowns, I believe. And guess what? Brady would tell you that's fine because all that matters is the team got the win. And they're on next week to Miami. That's all that matters. And that's all I'm sure he'll say. But one thing I want to talk about in this game before we move on is if you were watching early in the game, Tampa Bay punted to New England. New England went to receive the ball. They muffed the punt. The ball had rolled back toward the end zone. And before going out of bounds, it struck the pylon. Directly struck the pylon. Which, one, pushing the pylon. Second of all, should that not be a safety? My friends I watch the games with on Sundays, we couldn't believe it. We're looking at each other saying, wait a minute, that's a safety. If you fumble and it goes into the end zone and goes out of bounds, it's a safety. No questions asked. However, it was called a touchback. And as of right now, filming this podcast, I have still not received an official explanation from the NFL. I haven't seen an official explanation. Please send it to me. Add it to me on social media if you see one. The best explanation I've seen, and it involves the NFL rules here, so bear with me, but Section 7, Articles 3, 5, and 6 talk about fumbling and talk about fumbling out of bounds in the end zone. So, of course, and don't mind me, I'm kind of reading off here, we do know that if a ball is fumbled in the field of play and goes forward into the opponent's end zone and over the end line or sideline, a touchback is awarded. If a ball is fumbled in a team's own end zone or in the field of play and goes out of bounds in the end zone, it is a safety. If that team provided the impetus that set the ball into the end zone, see 11-5-1. So not to go in all these rules, of course, here, but essentially what that looks like it's saying is if the ball is fumbled and then goes into the end zone, it should be a safety. And for it to be called a touchback, I was still sitting there very unclear about it. So I tried to dig a little bit deeper into it. And I guess there's two clear definitions within this section that define what a fumble is and define what a muff is. And in this case, the fumble is the act other than passing, successfully handing or legally kicking the ball, which results in a loss of a player's possession. And a muff, like on a muff punt, for example, is the touching of a loose ball by a player in an unsuccessful attempt to obtain possession of it. So I believe what the important part is here is that they're claiming this player did not fumble the ball. So if he fumbled the ball into the end zone, it would have been a safety. However, he muffed the punt, went into the end zone, hit the pylon, becomes a touchback. Some of you are sitting there saying, Jim, I don't know what you're talking about. That makes no sense. It should be a safety. And I'm here to tell you, I agree with you. I didn't like what I said right there. What I just said didn't really make sense to me or answer my question. But I think that's the answer. Is that the punt returner muffed the punt instead of fumbling the punt, which changes the ruling of a safety to a touchback. Football. Man, it can't be any simpler, right? And yes, Tampa won by 2. It would have been 2 more points for Tampa. But the crazy part that the game was decided by 2 points, and you have a play like that just kind of go under the water for most, analysis, reporters, experts, etc. It's concerning because I don't get to watch every single play of every single game, but has that happened before? I don't ever remember seeing that before, where a player was able to muff a punt, whatever you want to call it, and have it perfectly hit the pylon like that and go out. Really strange situation. Ultimately didn't affect the result of the game. However, was something that for the rest of the game I couldn't get my mind off of. I'm sitting there saying, what in the world are these refs doing? I mean, half of me wanted to joke and say, oh, well, they're in New England, anything to help them. But the other half was saying, well, seriously, though, why is it not a safety? Why are the Patriots not giving up 2 points and the possession of the ball here? It didn't make sense to me. Swig of water for the working man. Regardless, very entertaining game. I'm glad I didn't go to the game. There's a game I was sitting there saying, I should go if there's a good opportunity. No, the weather was terrible. It seemed miserable. Much more enjoyable watching from a couch in the comfort of a home with all the food and drink around you, with the perfect view of the field without the pouring rain. That's just me, though. To each their own. Hit or stand time is here. Some of you, this is your favorite segment. This may be my favorite segment. This week, running back backup edition. There are multiple teams around the league right now, already by week 5, running with a running back different than the RB1 that started the year on the depth chart. In this hit or stand, we're going to talk about those running backs, and we're going to hit if we need the starting running back to come back, if we feel like the performance of who they currently have in the position is not enough, and they will not be successful or contenders without the starter back. If we're going to stand, we're going to say, guess what? I didn't even notice they were gone. This team has been doing so well with their backup that maybe they should make them the starter from now on, even with injuries being resolved. The first team, Carolina Panthers. Chuba Hubbard, Christian McCaffrey. We saw Christian McCaffrey leave the Thursday Night Football game 2 weeks ago against Houston with some leg injury, whether he pulled a hamstring, pulled a groin, did whatever. He was out. Chuba Hubbard comes in, and in my opinion, Chuba Hubbard has done pretty well filling in for Christian McCaffrey. You can't expect the world out of him to, suddenly turn up for the Panthers and become Christian McCaffrey. I don't think anybody expects that, but against the Cowboys this past week, he averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry, 57 yards on the ground. He had 2 receptions for 14 yards. Somewhat of a receiving back, but definitely not the receiving back you want when McCaffrey's the other option. Now listen, I love Chuba Hubbard. That's someone I thought coming out of the draft was one of the better running backs coming out of the draft. I didn't think he was better than an Etienne or a Najee Harris, but I did think he could have been drafted higher than he was. That being said, I'm absolutely hitting here. There is no way anyone can tell me that the Carolina Panthers don't need Christian McCaffrey back. They absolutely need Christian McCaffrey back. Sam Darnold is holding his own without him, sure. They're 3-1, sure. But can they go the rest of the year without Christian McCaffrey? Fortunately, they shouldn't have to. He seems like he's going to be back in the next couple weeks. However, these next few games, they have the Eagles, they have the Vikings, they have the Giants, they have the Falcons. Those games you can get by. But what happens later in the year when they have to go play the Arizona Cardinals? They have to play the Buccaneers twice. They have to play the Saints. They have to play the Buffalo Bills. Those games get very hard when you don't have a dual threat man in the backfield to help Sam Darnold. Chuba Hubbard can play both dimensions of running back. You want him running the ball. You don't want him in the backfield receiving all game. You are underutilizing his true potential at that point, in my opinion. We're going to get CMC back on that field, keep Chuba as a complimentary back until he develops even further in this league, and Carolina should be fine. The Atlanta Falcons. What can I say about the Atlanta Falcons besides regardless who's their running back, I don't think that's the problem in Atlanta. They are having a lot of issues on defense. They just blew a game to Washington this past week. High-scoring affair, so definitely doesn't endorse their strong defense. But for the rushing game, we have Mike Davis, we have Cordero Patterson, running back / receiver Cordero Patterson. But Mike Davis this year, 49 carries, 151 yards, and not a single touchdown on the ground. Cordero Patterson, 27 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. Now, that one touchdown on the ground doesn't sound like a lot, but then you have to realize he has 4 receiving touchdowns as a wide receiver, or at least as an eligible receiver. In this case, I'm going to say stand. You know what? Mike Davis, make him the backup. Cordero Patterson should be your starter. He should be on the field at all times. No, he's not as good as Calvin Ridley. No, he wasn't as good as the running backs Atlanta had before this. But the situation they have right now, he fits in such a way where he can torch a defense for Atlanta. They need those speed demons that can just play anywhere on the field, confuse the defense, give Matt Ryan those free, easy passing yards that he will blow up the final stat for when he's in the Hall of Fame with some ridiculous total number at the end. But the big reason for stuff like that is because of a Cordero Patterson being available for them. I would say you start Cordero Patterson. Go for free. I would think about free agent running backs for Atlanta, but they clearly don't want any of them. Todd Gurley's out there. They're the reason that Todd Gurley's out there, because they didn't want him. So I guess use what you have, and Cordero Patterson should be your guy. The Buffalo Bills. Shaky start to the year. Have seemed to calm down and turn it up since. They look very good. They look back to being a legit AFC contender, perhaps even more. They are unique in this hitter stand because they're one of 2 teams, and the second team we'll get to after, that has an abundance in the backfield of talent. They have 2 running backs, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss. Either one could be the starter. But as of right now, it seems like Zach Moss is getting the majority of the opportunity. Devin Singletary has more touches than him with 49 to 35. He has more rushing yards than him, 259 to 147. But the touchdown difference, 1 for Singletary, 3 for Moss. Moss is going to get more carries on the goal line. But in this case, if we're saying that hit means Devin Singletary because they started the year as he was the starter, kind of, and we're going to say stand for Zach Moss. Those of you that know me know I'm a bigger Devin Singletary fan than Zach Moss personally. However, from what I'm seeing, Zach Moss should be the guy until further notice. He is playing well for Buffalo. Continue to use both for sure, but if one needs to be the RB1, quote unquote, I'm going to say stand. I'm going to say keep using Zach Moss like they are. The more and more I talk about Buffalo, though, the more and more it's just do what you want with those running backs, right? I mean, when you're Josh Allen, you're a third running back on your own almost. Stephon Diggs, he can do stuff out of the backfield, and he's a all-pro, one of the best receivers in football. Buffalo, especially their offense, oozes talent. Their defense, I should even say especially their offense, because it's both sides of the ball. It's just ridiculous for them. And regardless who they play, Zach Moss or Devin Singletary, they should be fine in the backfield as long as they can get the blocking for them. The Dallas Cowboys. This was the second team where I was talking about an abundance of talent in the backfield. You have Tony Pollard, 37 carries, 250 yards, and a touchdown. You have Ezekiel Elliott, which, by the way, my goodness gracious, what a week from Ezekiel Elliott. He should be the ground player of the week in all of those NFL polls they do. He wasn't the only player to have a good week, but 20 carries, 143 yards, and a touchdown. At that point, you're averaging over 7 yards a carry in 20 yards or 20 attempts. That is insane. It's absolutely insane, and I'm surprised he didn't have more rushing yards considering Dak didn't even hit 200 passing yards. They almost dropped 40 points with both of those guys not having some super ridiculous, impossible to believe yard total. But this year, Zeke has 64 carries, 342 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He has been turning it up definitely as of late, the past 2 weeks for sure. Come on now, though. This is the easiest one yet. This is an easy stand. Zeke's your starter. Do not listen to those hot take experts out there that want to say Tony Pollard should be the starter. End that. End the lack of intelligence immediately. Ezekiel Elliott is one of the best running backs in the league. I think he's one of the best running backs in my generation or time of watching football. And this is from a pure talent standpoint. I'm going to remove... I know the Ohio State logo is right here on my chest, but I try to figuratively remove it when I think about it. And man, Zeke fully healthy. I don't see anything better than that. He is just all around just the guy you want. He can pass catch better than most people give him credit for. Dallas Cowboys should be fine this year. Dallas Cowboys should be a contender this year. And barring injury, the Cowboys should finally get the monkey off their back and make a real scare around the league that they may have it all come together this year. And I think it's possible. And finally, we just talked about him from Sunday Night Football. The New England Patriots. They have a weird situation. James White went down with a terribly unfortunate hip injury. We won't be seeing him the rest of the year. So New England has to figure out their backfield with a rookie quarterback. Tough thing to do. You want your quarterback to be able to trust who they're handing the ball off to, who's got their back. And they kind of have a three-headed monster here. They have Najee Harris, who in my opinion is the best available running back in New England right now. They have Brandon Bolden. They have J.J. Taylor. We saw a little bit of all of them on Sunday night. And before I move on, I just want to read you the running back stat lines from that night because it's tough to believe when you hear these if you didn't know them already. So first off, I do want to ask a pop quiz here. Who is the leading rusher of the New England Patriots on Sunday Night Football? You may say, oh, you know what? Brandon Bolden must have been the guy, right? He had 1 carry and didn't get a single yard. Oh, that must be J.J. Taylor. You know what? I should have picked him. 1 carry, 0 yards for J.J. Taylor also. And all of you out there have been saying Damian Harris this whole time. Of course, right? Of course it's Damian Harris. He's the starter. I just said he's the best talent available. He had 4 carries, so of course he had to be the leading rusher. He had negative 4 yards and 4 carries. That is one of the most absurd things I've seen on a stat line this season. So no, Damian Harris was not the leading rusher. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's Mac Jones. Of course, the quarterback doing a little bit of scrambling during the game. Went through all these running backs. It couldn't have been them. So, of course, Jim must be holding back Mac Jones from us. 1 carry, negative 1 yards for Mac Jones. So when I tell you the running backs I just named you off for New England Patriots, 4 of them had a combined negative 5 yards on the ground. The leading rusher, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, who had 1 carry for 4 yards. That's the leading rusher in New England. It's scary. That is scary that a New England Patriot team can only lose by 2 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, defending Super Bowl champions, when their leading rusher is a wide receiver who doesn't have hands. Man, it makes me jealous because as a Jaguars fan, I see that. And it enrages me that my running back can go for 100 yards and we get blown out. New England backfield is putrid. Hit, double down, hit. However many cards you need to take, they need James White back. They need the change of pace. They need something in that backfield. If they want to get Corey Dillon back from 10 years ago, do it. If you want to get Kevin Falk back, do it. You know, they have to do something there. Poor Mac Jones needs something to be able to rely on in the backfield because you're not going to have Mac Jones be able to throw 31 for 40 every game this year. His passer rating was horrible. I'm sorry, his QBR was horrible, but his passer rating was very good. So we'll see. But the New England Patriots, that backfield is hit. Figure it out. So that was hitter stand. A little quick rapid fire there. If I missed any backfields, feel free to let me know and what you think if you would hit or stand on these as well. Before we go, I should say, a quick rundown of the league week games. I just wanted to talk about the ones we haven't already. We had the Bears and Lions. Bears did what we all thought they'd do, is go in and beat the Lions by double digits. Justin Fields didn't have a big showcase game. He did enough to win, however. Lions stay winless. David Montgomery gets hurt. That's going to kill any momentum the Bears had at 2-2. We'll see if the Bears can do without Montgomery for the next few weeks. It's going to be tough because this happens to be the tough part of their schedule. It goes from the Raiders to the Packers to the Bucks to the 49ers to the Steelers to the Ravens until they play the Lions again. And then after that, they have to play the Cardinals. So very tough schedule for the Bears as it is without David Montgomery. A lot of those games seem like impossible challenges. We talked about the Dallas Cowboys beating the Carolina Panthers, giving them their first loss of the season. The Indianapolis Colts, all the talk about how they are a winless team. They were able to get a win against the Miami Dolphins. They won 27-17. They did so. Jonathan Taylor had a very good game. Carson Wentz actually had a very good game. He threw 24 for 32, 228, and 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Can't ask for more from a guy who's recovering from 2 injured ankles at once. Cleveland Browns low-scoring affair with the Minnesota Vikings, win 14-7. I was surprised by that. I did think the Vikings were going to take it. I guess Nick Chubb is the one you look at for the credit because Baker really didn't do anything. He threw 15 for 33 at 155 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. Nick Chubb did have the century mark on the ground and rushing. Credit to the Browns. The New York Giants, shout out. I had to watch this game with 2 Giants fans and a Saints fan. Very stressful trying to be a neutral friend because I want them to be happy. My team didn't play, so I got to sit there and root for the Cowboys while watching those fans worry about their game. Giants pull off the shocker, win in overtime, 27-21. I didn't think they'd do it, but Danny Dimes showed up. Danny Dimes came to play, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Saquon Barkley had a great game, 13 carries, 52 yards and a touchdown. May not seem good, but you also have to include he had 5 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown receiving. Great game by Saquon. Great game by the Giants. Problem is, similar to who we just talked about last time with the Bears, the Giants have a very tough schedule coming up. They play the Dallas Cowboys. They play the LA Rams. They play the Carolina Panthers. What do those 3 teams have in common? They're all 3-1 right now. After that, they play a 2-2 team, so you're saying, okay, good. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, the fakest 2-2 team of all time. Some may say they should be 0-3 or 0-4, but they're beasts. You know that. You don't want to play them no matter what their record is. After that, they play the Raiders. They play the Bucks. They play the Eagles. They play the Dolphins. Then they go Chargers, Cowboys. So from October 10th to December 19th, their 2 easiest games are the Dolphins and Eagles. That is half the season. And only 2 of those games even seem winnable. Yikes. That is tough for the Giants. I feel for them, but all they can do is keep playing like they did against New Orleans. And they're going to pull off some upsets for sure. Probably the Cowboys once, because that's what they always do, is upset the Cowboys somehow. Moving on, we have another team winning their first game of the year. Another shocker. Another New York team. This time it's the Jets, who beat the Titans 27-24. This was in overtime. Like I said, the Titans missed a field goal, had a chance to tie it. Derrick Henry, monster, 33 carries, over 150 rushing yards, a touchdown. Zach Wilson, I mean, he almost had 300 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. Corey Davis, 4 catches and a $111 with a touchdown. Jets played a good game. Robert Saleh got his first NFL victory as well. I believe it was his first NFL victory. He must have been if he started this year. Very impressive from the Jets. Yes, the Titans were very banged up. Every Titans fan is going to let you know that A.J. Brown and Julio Jones were out. But Titans play the Jaguars next week as we talk about the Jets go and play the Atlanta Falcons in London. Can they get a second win in a row? It might be possible. The Chiefs, who we just talked about, kind of routed the Eagles. However, Chiefs defense does not look good at all. They gave up 30 points to the Eagles. They gave up like 400 yards to Jalen Hurts. They're going to need to clean that up a lot if they expect to be AFC contenders this year. But it's Patrick Mahomes. I'm not doubting him ever. So I'm sure he'll figure it out. I'm sure the team will figure it out because great teams always do. Arizona Cardinals pull off the upset against the Rams in dominant fashion, 37-20. Just absolutely showing people that, hey, we can win this division. Doesn't matter the Rams, 49ers, Seahawks. We can be the best team. Kyler Murray continues to put up an MVP resume to start the year. He ran 6 times for 39 yards. He threw 268, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Passer rating of 120.3, QBR of over 80. Great game, in my opinion, from Kyler Murray. One of the top quarterbacks in the league. I have him top 5. I have him over a guy like Josh Allen, where some people I've talked to say that I'm wrong for that. Let me know what you think. Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. We're going to figure it out this week. So stay tuned on social media. I'm going to be asking around, and we're going to get a final definitive answer from you out there on that one. Staying in the division, the Seahawks beat the 49ers 28-21. This was on a good game from Russell Wilson, a fishing game, I should say. 16 for 23, only 149 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Chris Carson seems to be banged up. Alex Collins ended up being the leading rusher that game. 44 yards and a touchdown. This was one of my big games of the week here. I love this game from the start. The Baltimore Ravens against the Broncos. Yes, they were in Denver, but the Ravens were underdogs. I couldn't believe it. Ravens win 23-7. Lamar Jackson has a fantastic game. And the Denver Broncos lose Teddy Bridgewater to a concussion. Drew Lock is back to being the starter for the time being. We had the Green Bay Packers beat the Steelers 27-17. Big Ben still impressed even without targets. His stat line wasn't this jump out of the page stat line, but I do think Big Ben performed very well considering that whole team's banged up. I mean, he had his 3 receivers play. Juju only had 2 catches, but he had 8 targets. Najee Harris, 6 catches, 29 yards as a receiver. 15 rushes for 60 yards and a touchdown as a rusher. Najee Harris, clearly the star we all think he is, but the question is, will Pittsburgh be better with him? Or is he just excess talent to a team that is doomed already and needs a lot of other things addressed that aren't running back? Final game we haven't talked about, Monday Night Football. LA Chargers defend home turf and beat the Vegas Raiders, even though if you were watching the game, it sounded like a Raiders home game because so many people in LA still love their Raiders, and that will never change, especially for the Chargers, who may be the 5th most popular team in California. And I don't even think, there's not even 5 teams in California, but they're probably 5th somehow, behind USC or something. Justin Herbert, absolute star. Bring up his MVP resume because he is making one. 25 for 38, 222, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Austin Eckler in the backfield helped him out a lot there as well. 15 carries, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Chargers proving that they can go and win the AFC West, especially if they can catch the Chiefs sleeping and catch some more wins on them this season. Week 5, we're going to have the Rams and Seahawks playing on Thursday night, so make sure to be on the lookout on social media for my predictions for that, because guess what? 4 Thursday night football games this year, 4 wins for Pushing the Pylon. Not even the Jaguars being on Thursday night football was able to jinx my pick. I had the Jaguars plus 7.5, of course. This week feels like a weird week for me. Rams, Seahawks. Very hesitant for my pick here, which makes me think this could be my first actual loss. I'm going to keep saying that to build up the drama. In my head, in reality, my confidence tells me we're going to get this right again. Rams, Seahawks, I know the winner. I know what I'm picking. My picks are good, but you're going to have to find out. Watch that video. Be on the lookout for it. Usually on TikTok, but it will be posted to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well. In closing, I just want to let you all know that I am, again, very grateful for those of you who come out and watch this every episode, and make sure to hit the like button on YouTube. More of you do that, by the way. Please and thank you. And offer your feedback. Some of you know me personally in real life. You have reached out and given constructive criticism. You've given praise. Regardless, I love it all. I do this for the simple fun of doing it. I'd be talking off one of my friend's ears if I didn't have this and just talk sports. So this is a good little venting session for me. And we're going to keep adding to it as weeks go on. We're only in episode 6. We're only approaching week 5 of NFL football. We're going to do it right. We're going to have a good time. We're going to get some more people on the podcast. I know I keep saying that, but scheduling is tough with the recording hours that we're doing right now. I'm looking to improve recording hours a little bit. 1 for myself. 2 for my fantastic producer, John. Shout out 45 Studios. Give them a follow as well. If you need any work done, like editing on a podcast, producing on music, really anything to do with technology and entertainment and producing good content, hit up 45 Street Studios. They'll get you right, just like they got Pushing the Pylon right. But, as always, this is your host, Jim Tannhauser. Thank you for watching. Catch you in episode 7. Enjoy this week of football. It's getting cold. Bundle up. Be ready. Thank you very much.